This week in the business of tech, the Surgeon General weighs in on toxic workplaces, what employees are doing rather than commuting. Passkeys are now in the wild, IT leaders aren't being listened to, the amount of waste in cloud software, and a framework for disruption. All these stories and more. Hit those like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. A new study from McKinsey and leanin.org shows that female leaders were more likely than their male counterparts to switch jobs in 2021. Quoting Axios, 10.5% of women leaders, from senior managers up to the C-suite, quit their jobs over the past year, the highest rate in the 5 years that McKinsey and leanin.org have surveyed companies about attrition rates. The rate for men was 9%. Typically, attrition rates for men and women run closer together, with a spread of only around half a point. The report draws attention to the broken rung concept as a problem area for companies, the gap in the share of women elevated into management relative to men. For every 100 men promoted out of entry-level positions, only 87 women and 82 women of color got the same lift up the ladder. The report finds that women's authority at work is undermined in various ways, so they leave. For example, 37% of women leaders said they've had a coworker get credit for their idea, compared to 27% of men. Women leaders are twice as likely to be mistaken for someone more junior. Asian women and Black women said they're less likely to have strong allies on their teams. Women are also more likely to do work to support coworkers and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that type of work doesn't typically get recognized when it comes time to evaluate performance. Black woman leaders are 1.5 times as likely as women overall to have colleagues question their judgment or imply they're unqualified for their jobs. And per coverage of the survey and protocol, it's even worse in tech. These talent gaps between men and women are wider in tech. In hardware, women make up 32% of entry-level positions and 26% of the C-suite. In software, women represent 41% of entry-level jobs and 27% of the C-suite. This includes tech roles at non-tech companies. The difference between men and women holding tech roles is 2.5 times more men than women. In 2018, it was 1.9 times. One solution may be embracing flexible work styles. According to the report, only around 10% of women surveyed wanted to work primarily on site. Though working from home is still often helpful for women with families, many reported that it's about more than just time constraints. While working from home, many said they experienced less discrimination and fewer microaggressions, especially women of marginalized groups. Thus, remote work works as a hiring tool. More than 70% of HR leaders surveyed said remote work has helped their companies hire more talent from diverse backgrounds. Let's note two other details on remote working. 3 economists released a working paper last week indicating that remote work also likely caused a mini baby boom in 2021. The increase in birth rates was more pronounced for first-time mothers and college-educated women. It's slight, but it reverses a years-long decline in the birth rate. And only 1/3 of women in tech, media, and telecom industries with hybrid work schedules report satisfaction with their work-life balance, says a new Deloitte report. Unsurprisingly, 86% of the women with children report that they bear most of the childcare responsibilities, which can be complicated by varied work schedules that require similarly changing childcare needs. Why do we care? I believe that finding solutions within companies is a competitive edge. As the data continues to show, flexible companies with their work environments appear to outperform. Plus, let's note that major factors impacting employees are outside of the scope of the office. This continues to be a key factor. Too often, employers assume job satisfaction is entirely about in-office conditions when people are people in totality. and their experiences outside of the office matter. Toxic workplaces may be bad for your health too. This from the U.S. Surgeon General, who warned last week specifically about abusive or cutthroat workplaces. The good news? The Surgeon General's office laid out a set of recommendations to help. According to the Surgeon General's guidance, 5 qualities can predict whether people believe their workplace is toxic. The culture is disrespectful, non-inclusive, unethical, cutthroat, or abusive. The Surgeon General recommends 5 essentials for workplaces to ensure employee mental health and well-being: protection from harm, connection, community, work-life harmony, mattering at work, and opportunity for growth. Why do we care? You know things are bad when the Surgeon General weighs in. We care because medical professionals are offering practical and implementable advice to employers. Should be a statement on the state of play that the Surgeon General feels it necessary to weigh in. Like smoking or addiction. Employers, take heed. So, what are people doing with all that time by not commuting? Researchers at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York have found that workers across multiple age brackets are sleeping more, pursuing more leisure activities, and cutting overall work hours. Using data from WFH's research, American Time Use Survey, as of June 2020, 15% of full-time employees work fully remote, 55% are full-time at the office, and 30% work hybrid. They found that employed individuals allocate their saved commute time toward leisure activities and sleeping while reducing overall work hours. The analysis found that remote workers spend more time on leisure and sleeping. Younger Americans reported spending more time at social events, eating at restaurants or bars, and exercising. Older age groups allocated more time to childcare, household chores and repairs, and meal preparation. That said, it's not all slacking. A survey from the Conference Board shows that 81% of workers are putting the same amount of effort or more as they were 6 months ago. Just getting the baseline of work done is harder during a labor shortage. Why do we care? I'm pushing back on 2 narratives. First, that employees are lazy. That isn't what the data shows. And a reminder, yesterday I covered the Surgeon General pushing back on toxic workplaces as a health concern. The second is the larger narrative which I prioritize. Employees are people. That sounds simple. Of course they are. That said, most of the conversation about employee management focuses on just their in-office experiences, which leaves out all the detail of them as human beings. The successful leaders I talk to have a similar thread, viewing people more holistically. I want to continue to highlight that as we make business analysis. I mentioned those cybersecurity labels last week, putting Energy Star-like labels on smart devices to convey information. Well, the idea is popular. In a new survey by BlackBerry, 80% of adults said a cybersecurity star rating system would make them feel safer while using an internet-connected device. Trust is why. Only 1 in 5 adults thought smart speakers are safe from cyber threats, the highest-ranked device among the 10 surveyed. And money talks. 64% of adults say they're prepared to pay more for a device that has been rated as having the highest cybersecurity star rating. The Biden administration is pushing for this initiative to be rolled out in the spring. And while there does appear to be industry support, so far there are few specifics about the idea, particularly around whether or not it will be mandatory and how exactly the label will measure device security. The basic idea? NIST will publish standards, and a third-party licensing body that still needs to be created will rate the products. Why do we care? It's early days on the initiative, so it's a fact of the state of play rather than a criticism. Any program starts somewhere. The key learning here is that customers like visibility when trust is at stake, and visibility matters. Ponder the idea of these kinds of labels more broadly on tech, perhaps even on services. Here's your marketing idea. Consider this proactively. Apple released iOS 16.1 and the new Mac OS, which both include Passkeys support, and PayPal is following suit, announcing that Passkeys are being rolled out to consumers now on the desktop and web interface. Google is currently testing Passkey support, and Microsoft says its accounts will work with Passkey shortly. The feature with PayPal syncs across Apple devices using iCloud Keychain, and app support will be coming soon. Why do we care? Passkeys are now in the wild in a major operating system and all of Apple's ecosystem. This is a significant milestone, and I suggest that anyone doing support had better be geared up for this. Are you ready with management recommendations, such as password management questions? These are all open questions.
Did you know about Stir Shaken? If you're doing voice for your customers, you'd better. The deadline was June 30th. This technology is focused on reducing robocalls, and providers have to take action. Are you compliant? The team at OITVoIP has put together resources for you to learn more. Or, for their customers, it's already handled. Want to learn more? Visit oit.co/MSP Radio for resources to help make sure you're covered.
I spotted an interview in ZDNet with Laurie McCabe, co-founder and partner at tech analyst SMB Group, who offers that SMB spending on IT might be in line with their enterprise counterparts, and one of the main reasons for this is the cloud. Let's pull from the piece. Quote, "The reason is simple. Many small businesses, especially younger ones, are not so encumbered by a reliance on the legacy applications that can proliferate in older, bigger firms. With effectively a greenfield site on which to build, SMB owners and managers are searching the market for the best cloud-based solutions to the challenges they face, whether that's managing payments, automating time-consuming activities, or supporting workplace collaboration. If you're a newer business, you're not probably going to buy a lot of software that you have to run on premises," says McCabe. "That means you're going to start right out the gate thinking about what's the easiest way for you to get the solutions your business needs. And in most cases, that's going to be through the cloud." Cloud spending by SMBs has shot up significantly during the past year, according to one report which predicts that 63% of SMB workloads and 62% of SMB data will reside in a public cloud within the next year. And this section. In fact, the tech analyst says SMBs continue to be optimistic about their companies, even though they face ongoing impediments such as tough macroeconomic conditions and geopolitical instability. It predicts global IT spending by SMBs will increase by 5.8% year-on-year in 2022. This growth will reach 7.4% by 2025. More specifically, much of this tech spend will be directed to the cloud. The tech analyst expects global SMB spending on SaaS-based business applications and collaboration tools will grow 17% annually through 2026 to reach $291 billion. Why do we care? This analyst sounds a lot like me in my "If I Was Starting an MSP Today" piece. The emphasis on SaaS specifically is why we care. I continue to believe there is a disconnect going on between those traditional infrastructure companies who focus on infrastructure as a service, meaning Azure, GCP, and AWS, versus SaaS broadly. There's lots of coverage of Microsoft 365 management, and a lot less beyond that in the SaaS space. And that's where all the action, money, and value are. A new survey from Manage Engine of IT leaders says 58% are actively looking for a new role because they aren't being listened to in company decision-making processes. 41% of IT leaders report having been consulted inadequately or not at all in organizational decisions around hybrid working. An example, the report found that non-IT departments have the final say when it comes to decisions around purchasing apps and IT software for the company, 54%, facilitating IT audits, 52%, purchasing devices, 45%, and hiring tech talent, 48%. And a survey of nearly 12,000 cybersecurity professionals shows that despite a jump of 11.1% in the global security workforce, the need has grown by 26.2%. Some good news: in a survey by BlackBerry, while 80% said it's hard to fill specialized security roles, 80% also use a managed services provider to backfill those security workloads. 45% say the ability to free up existing resources is the top anticipated benefit of leveraging managed IT and cybersecurity services. Why do we care? On the flip side to my last piece, here's the apparent value for providers: filling in roles that are harder to fill, particularly in security. While it's an obvious play for services companies to focus on that IT leader spot, the danger to care about is falling into the same trap of not being listened to. A services org can exist a lot longer than an individual employee can for sure, as it's easier to collect payments and be ignored. It's just not a recipe for long-term success. There's also the subtle loss of control IT faces. More than half of decisions for apps and software are outside of IT controls. That's good for the business, and ultimately, good for the IT outsourcing model. Earlier this week, I reported a gloomy Bloomberg model that assured a recession. Goldman Sachs has one out that's less grim, and the bank says that the risk the U.S. economy must fall into a recession to slow inflation has diminished slightly. Goldman noted that even if a recession is not required, there is a heightened risk that outsized moves by the Fed will force one anyway. If you want to hear from CEOs, they're gloomy too. 91% of U.S. CEOs anticipate a recession in the next 12 months, according to a KPMG survey. Insider has a whole piece with quotes from various business leaders that's predictably glum. If you want a bit of optimism, IDC has some predictions around Western Europe, predicting the services market will grow. Researcher IDC has raised its regional outlook by 100 to 200 basis points each year to more than 7% for 2022. The group also boosted predictions by 5.5% to 6% growth per year for the next 4 years in its worldwide semi-annual services tracker. Meanwhile, those jobs that depended on office workers are taking a hit. An example: Facebook parent Meta is reducing contract positions at several transportation firms that shuttled workers to its offices, CNBC reported last week. Why do we care? So this should be the 2023 planning time. The year distinctly appears challenging from an overall landscape perspective. I'm thinking now about my own 2023 predictions, and while I anticipate slowing inflation, I suspect overall growth will slow too. It's that last tidbit I think is worth considering. Uncertainty is the mood, yet the critical insight is trying to anticipate the unexpected changes to the economy. Those changes will offer opportunities. Transportation firms are taking a hit due to less need to move office workers around. There are reports of impacts to downtown, such as lunch restaurants, that are slow to recover. What new business space will be created due to this impact, and what services do they require? More than 1/3 of desktop software spending and roughly 1/3 of annual investment in data center software, SaaS, infrastructure service, and a platform as a service are wasted, according to a Flexera report released Wednesday. Fewer than half of 500 IT executives surveyed over the summer said their organization tracks SaaS usage to align contracts with software needs, leading to app redundancy and unnecessary spending. The report said the struggle to implement best governance practice for SaaS use and spending remains challenging. Only 35% of companies have complete visibility into IT assets and their impact on business. Why do we care? With projections grim from the previous story, saving customers money seems like a much more powerful incentive. I've been dismissive of this class of management software in the past. I'm much less so when advising about ensuring business efficiency during tough times. And that's why we care. Victims of ransomware attacks in the manufacturing and production industry are making the biggest ransom payments, with the average ransom demand being just over $2 million. Of the victims who paid a ransom to cyber criminals to get the decryption key to retrieve encrypted files and servers, and disclosed how much they paid for it, the average ransom was $2,386,189. That's more than double the average ransom payment made by those who detailed the cost, which amounted to $812,360. Of those who paid the ransoms, despite warnings not to, 37% of respondents ended up paying more than $100,000, while 8% paid more than $1 million for a decryption key. But while victims might believe meeting a ransom demand is the quickest way to recover their data, according to an analysis of incidents in the manufacturing and production sector, an average of just 59% of data was recovered after paying a ransom. That's lower than the 61% of data recovered on average across all sectors. This story thanks to ZDNet. Why do we care? Vertical specialization has been something of a theme lately, and seeing that the damages are also industry-specific is enlightening. Bit a highlight of going specialist. One can match their value more closely to the industry. Plus, paying the ransom may not be the right move. I spotted a piece in CIO Dive entitled, "Managed Service Providers Are Here to Save the Hybrid Cloud." It starts with the Tuesday announcement of Calendral Consult, a business aimed at helping enterprises integrate and manage cloud-based and on-prem IT estates. Kyndryl itself is the IBM spin-off consulting business. Let's quote the article. Spending on managed services for both cloud and on-prem infrastructure is expected to win a larger share of overall spending in 2023 IT budgets, accounting for 18%, up from 15% this year, according to Spiceworks Ziff Davis's annual survey. The trend is reflected in the number of active partnerships between CSPs and MSPs. In North America alone, AWS currently partners with 50 MSPs, including Accenture, IBM, and Infosys. Google has 36, and Microsoft lists nearly 70. What makes a partnership successful is they've got a cloud, and cloud does a lot of things, said Harish Grama, Kyndryl's global cloud practice leader, but it's also very complex. That complexity shows up in the form of unsuccessful deployments. Nearly one-third of technology decision makers surveyed in a 2021 Gartner report said their organization had suffered a cloud deployment failure in the last 3 years. Reasons for those failures range from integration problems and poor choice of provider to inaccurate cost estimates and unexpected cost increases. Why do we care? Acknowledging this is an insight into large MSPs, there's still insight. The data continues to say that overall managed services spend looking strong for next year, which is good. That said, think about those unsuccessful deployments. The complexity is why the value of a provider can shine, but one-third of projects failing is not a good success rate. Providers should measure this, be able to position against competition with their success rates, and ideally include specific ROI numbers for customers to measure success against. Those MSP numbers are good to remember too. When thinking about enterprise-size MSPs, there's a size. There are less than 200 of them. Here's an interoperability story I didn't predict, quoting ZDNet. Google has announced new two-way interoperability between Zoom and Meet for conference rooms, along with the first Meet-certified Android conference appliances, which expands Google's Meet-certified hardware beyond Chrome OS. When interoperability arrives later this year, users of the company's respective conference solutions, Zoom Rooms, can join Google Meet meetings, and Google Meet devices can join Zoom meetings. This can be done from a Zoom Room or a Google Meet device calendar at the touch of a button. Why do we care? The reality of business is heterogeneous, so it's encouraging to see these two make their devices work together. Great news for providers. Want to leverage the value of the work layer? Here's one more way. A big thought to go into the weekend. What would dethrone the iPhone? Insider has a great piece on that, and I wanted to highlight a section from the article. Quote, To explain how Apple will fall, I offer a framework for how technology cycles occur, a cycle that is held true for a variety of technical innovations, from refrigeration to audio technologies. Technology shifts over time and goes through 5 phases. First, multiple companies produce differing technologies that serve the same user need. Second, market forces lead to one standard emerging as non-substitutable infrastructure. Often, it is not the best-of-breed technology that wins market adoption. Third, that standard is attacked by pseudo-challengers who imitate it but do not effectively displace it, as the pseudo-challengers do not offer enough meaningful differentiation or have different flaws than the technology they attempt to displace. But pseudo-challengers often have enough value to survive and coexist alongside the dominant technology. Fourth, the standard reemerges stronger than before and appears invincible to displacement. And finally, a new and better technology emerges and displaces the existing standard. iOS is in stage 4. It has achieved dominance and mindshare despite being challenged by the Android operating system and a host of devices from the like of Google and Samsung. To supplant the Apple juggernaut, any new technology that comes to market must meet the following criteria. First, it must offer visible and demonstrable value and differentiation that can be directly exploited by end users. One reason the iPhone replaced flip phones was that it had a real browser and touchscreen with a pinch-to-zoom feature, made using the internet feel more like you were on a PC than a cell phone. Second, it must offer economic benefits to a marketplace of vendors. The iPhone offered apps, an entirely new market for existing and new software developers. And third, it must offer clear economic benefits to hardware vendors. If conditions 1 and 2 are met, hardware vendors have strong incentive to build systems to take advantage of the new technology and drive upgrades. Why do we care? This framework for tech disruption is one that's going to rattle around the brain for a bit, and it's something to apply to a lot of other technologies. I offer it for consideration. I'll be pondering it myself.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.